Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Mickey. Today we're going to talk about the two things going on right now in the economy that could be the Achilles heels or the Trojan horses for your business. These two things, if you don't account for them, you're going to be bankrupt in a couple years. And you know, it sucks because most of my customers are not paying attention to these two things. Now, before I tell you what these two things are, take a moment, like this video, subscribe to the channel. Anyways, let's get into it. So let's call a spade a spade. Look, most of your distributors, you buy a product from somebody and you sell it to somebody else, and you operate on the slimmest of profit margins. In most occasions, you are fighting against your competition for the cheapest price. And really, your entire business is predicated upon buying something for as cheap as possible and then selling it for as cheap as possible and making a profit, right? So for instance, I've got a customer that sells ice cream. Okay, they sell $35, $40 million a year, and they operate on a 3% net profit margin. So they run this behemoth of a business to buy and sell and trade product essentially to make not that much money for the amount of work and the amount of capital that needs to be deployed to keep this business running on a day-to-day basis. So these businesses, these distribution businesses are already on the precipice, right? They're on the tip, on the edge of falling, right? And breaking, kind of like Humpty Dumpty. The moment Humpty Dumpty fell off that wall, it broke. It shattered into a million different pieces. And then he had to be put back together again. I don't want you to be Humpty Dumpty. I want you to be prepared for what's coming. So anyways, now that we know who we're talking about and the type of business that we're in, let's talk about the two things. Number one, there is a sharp increase in labor costs as of late. If you're anything like me, you're struggling to find quality people for the amount of money that we used to pay before COVID. For instance, I used to be able to pay $10 an hour for certain employees, and they would do an amazing job. That whole marketplace has been eviscerated. That whole marketplace has disappeared because stimulus has come into play, unemployment's come into play, increases to the minimum wage have come into play, and they're forcing all of those people out of the labor force because it doesn't make any sense for me to hire somebody at $15 or $20 now when I used to be able to get them at $10. So anyways, these increase to labor costs are not going to get any easier, especially with the leadership that we have in place. Everyone's advocating for a situation where the employee gets paid more and more and more, but that comes at the expense of the business owner's bottom line. So they're going to find a way to trim elsewhere, whether it's by cutting other employees, whether it's by increasing the prices of the product. The business owner always gets paid. So this increased pressure on wages, okay, is something you need to be aware of. Because here's what happens. Let's say you're operating on that 3% profit margin. If all of your employee payroll costs go from $10 to $15, well, that's a 50% increase to your wages. And you may be in an industry that sells a certain product or distributes a certain product where you can't necessarily raise your prices by 50% because it may not be legal. It may be regulated by the government. It may not be ethical. And the bottom line is your 3% is going to get squeezed to 1.5 and then 1.75. And next thing you know, you're running this huge business on almost zero profit. Could you imagine that? What would be the incentive for you to do that if you're not getting paid? So what do you do? What do you do to combat this primary point of increasing labor costs? Well, what I've seen most people do, they are automating everything in their business. As a matter of fact, there's been a huge increase in the research and development of robots that pick in a warehouse, right? A robot that goes up and down the aisles and picks orders to alleviate the cost of an employee in that warehouse picking orders. There has been a huge increase in automation in the back office, decreasing in manual paperwork, decrease in data entry, decrease in these tasks that just aren't efficient. There's a huge push to automate. At the end of the day, this automation, what it's going to do is it's going to decrease employees. Because again, employees are way too expensive at the moment. So what you guys need to be doing is, because this is happening, look at every manual task done in your business and figure out how you can replace these employees, or how you can replace them with an automated task and repurpose them to where they can clearly offset what they make, the wages that they make, with the production that they produce for your business. So again, number one is be aware of the ever increasing labor costs. Number two, be aware that the economy is drastically different now, and it's what we call a digital economy, as referred to by Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. He uses this phrase all the time. We now live in a digital economy. COVID made us change. COVID caused this paradigm shift that caused people to start working from home, that caused people to start ordering their groceries from home, that caused people to increase their Uber Eats consumption, right? That caused people to stop taking so many business flights because now everything is done through teleconference on Zoom or GoToMeeting. This digital economy has displaced some of the sales or the foot traffic at the stores where you supply your products, believe it or not. You may be like, hey Mickey, actually my sales are greater than they've been ever. Yes, they are right now. But over time, my generation is not going to set foot in a supermarket. We're not going to set foot in a gas station. We're going towards electric cars, and we're going towards all the food developed and delivered to my home, right? That's where we're headed. As a matter of fact, I haven't set foot in a supermarket in about a year and a half. And I was a big guy that would walk into that supermarket and buy random things that I saw. But when I order online, it's kind of like a standing order. I reorder the same thing every week, and it comes to my front door, and I bring it in, and that's the end of it because it saves me time. And I'm in the business of saving myself time so I could better allocate that time to other things. Now, you're not going to see a drastic drop in sales because of this overnight. You're going to see a gradual drop in sales, right? You're going to see the market gradually shift to the model where things get delivered straight to the consumer, where Amazon increasingly takes over more and more of this business. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you an example. One of my customers started off as a distributor of cell phone parts and accessories as a distributor, right? And they would make a few $1,000,000 a year in revenue, and then they would be left with a 1 to 2% net profit, what they took home in their pocket. So he thought to himself, how do I tie into Amazon, right? For those of you that don't know, Amazon's the behemoth, the guy or the company that's eventually going to take over all supply chain, all logistics, in my opinion, across the world. They're going to monopolize this thing, right? So he thought about, how can I integrate with these people? And he found something called a third-party distributor or third-party logistics provider, okay? And these are called DSPs. That's how Amazon calls them. And basically, he was able to adapt his distribution business into a DSP, rotate his drivers from distributing iPhone cables to distributing Amazon packages. And he went from making 1 to 2% net profit to making over $1,000,000 a year net in his pocket every single year, because he thought about how he could integrate into this digital economy. And that's exactly what you need to be thinking about. How can you integrate into this digital economy? Because any little change in what happens will drastically affect your pocketbooks, because your pocketbooks operate at such a tight profit margin that your business is susceptible to changes, right? So you just need to be aware of what these changes are, because if you don't, you could lose your business, okay? And worse, you could find yourself in a situation where you have to go back and start another business or work for somebody, a situation that you don't want to find yourself into. And this is what I'm thinking about. How can I adapt my technology to fit this ever-changing world? Because even if 20 or 30% people, or 20 to 30% of people visit a supermarket less, that's 20 to 30% less sales in the pockets of my distributors, which means a 20 to 30% loss in the users of my system. So I'm currently adapting the system to account for these changes and modifying it to fit other different segments of the market so that I don't see these changes affect this right here, right? At the end of the day, that my pocket, what I take home every day, is what really matters, and that's what should matter to you as a business owner. Anyways, I hope that you take those two things into account. Please like and subscribe the video, and I hope to see you next video. Take care.